betrayal and marriage. Choose to forgive or seek revenge. Subscribe to our channel for more inside stories. Sarah and I had recently celebrated our 20th anniversary along with our daughters Emily 16, Olivia 13 and our 15-year-old son, Daniel. My name is John and I was a 42-year-old content dad and husband at that time. Sarah, my wife since her 20th and my only love, was a charming blonde with blue eyes standing 5'6" and tall, weighing 105 pounds. Together we built a wonderful life, always putting our kids first in a loving home. Our family bonded over both good times and tough ones: birthdays, school events, Daniel's football injuries, the girls' soccer mishaps, and Sarah's battle with cancer 7 years ago. Her recovery only strengthened our bond. Raising 3 kids and managing finances was a challenge, leading us to put aside personal care, like gym visits over the decades. It's easy to gain a little weight, but we prioritized our children's futures over appearance. I worked in production management, Sarah was in purchasing. Our life was routine, but we never let our relationship or intimacy suffer, maintaining a happy and fulfilling physical connection. For years before Sophia and Roger moved into our neighborhood, a young couple in their late 20s with no children, they were known for their lively weekend parties. Sophia, a gym instructor with a stunning physique, and Roger, her 30-year-old husband, who was also fit, became our neighbors. When Sarah turned 38, she was a bit overweight, but it never bothered me, as I had also gained some weight over the years. Sophia encouraged Sarah, assuring her she could shed the extra pounds by joining her at the gym. 2 years later, as Sarah neared 40, she had slimmed down, significantly regaining her youthful figure. I always complimented her newfound beauty. This transformation brought out a new side of Sarah. She became more confident and our intimate life improved. With her increased energy, she embraced her rejuvenated self, and I did my best to keep her happy. With her new look came a wardrobe update inspired by Sophia. Sarah started wearing more fashionable, revealing outfits showing off her figure. Initially, I was a bit uneasy about her going to work dressed so stylishly, feeling a bit out of place in my regular attire. At Sarah's 40th birthday party, which I had organized with a band and catering at a local hotel, she looked stunning, in a chic dress and heels. I noticed other men admiring her and she seemed to enjoy the attention, exuding a newfound confidence. She publicly thanked Sophia for helping her reclaim her youth and improve our marriage. I was proud of her appearance and loved her new energy, but I couldn't help feeling uncomfortable watching her flirt and dance with younger men from her office. Throughout our marriage, Sarah had never danced with other men or flirted openly, but at her party she appeared to relish the attention. This bothered me, but I decided to let her enjoy the celebration and talk about my feelings. Later that night, after I brought it up, she apologized. She assured me she didn't want me to feel jealous or uncomfortable and promised it wouldn't happen again. She said she had gotten swept up in the excitement and the drinks. That night she made up for it in bed and even gave me a wonderful BJ, which was a rare gift. That night Sarah was full of energy in bed, taking the time to make sure I was fully satisfied, showing her gratitude for the party in her own special way. Things returned to normal, except Sarah started coming home late a few nights a week because of her gym sessions. I made sure to be there for the kids and had dinner ready on those evenings. When she came home late, Daniel, our son, had a club after school on Thursdays that required a ride home. Sarah agreed to do the Thursday pickups, since his school was quite a distance away and involved crossing busy streets. Daniel often complained about being picked up and insisted on walking home because of 15 years old. He didn't want his parents to pick him up. I explained that some of the roads he had to cross were too dangerous and to be in the school club he had to ride home with us. No exceptions. He reluctantly agreed and I picked him up every day except for Thursdays due to my staff meetings on Thursdays. It became Mom's routine to pick him up. However, one week Sarah was busy at work and forgot to pick him up. After waiting for 40 minutes, Daniel decided to walk home. This incident was one of the few times anyone in the family saw me upset. Sarah felt a bit and upset with herself. After witnessing my loss of temper, I made it clear how I felt about the situation. She swore it would never happen again after I cooled off. I accepted it as a mistake. No harm was done and everything returned to normal at home. She made it up to me in bed that night and life went on as usual. Financially, things were going well. Work was good and the family appeared to be happy. Except for me. Approximately 2 months later, I noticed our bed life had declined from 4 to 5 nights per week to once or twice. And the quality of our intimacy had diminished. Sarah became increasingly self-indulgent, preoccupied with her appearance, frequently getting facials and maintaining her hair and nails weekly. It seemed as she hit 40. She was determined to reverse the aging process. Our closet filled with new clothes and shoes. And when I voiced concerns about her spending, she reacted angrily, explaining that her efforts were for me, her husband, who benefited from her youthful appearance. I wanted to tell her that, despite her efforts, I was unsatisfied and our intimate life had become unsatisfactory. I missed the old Sarah, but assured her that I loved her just as much as the new version. She continued her late nights, spent time at the gym and even went out with Sophia, our neighbor and gym instructor. That's when I decided to plan a weekend getaway to reconnect and restore our relationship. I loved Sarah, but needed to assert myself and bring things back to normal. The following week, I made dinner reservations for Friday night to share my plans for our weekend escape during a romantic meal on Tuesday night. I informed her of the reservations and arranged for her parents to look after the kids. The next morning I watched her getting ready for work in another new dress, which seemed overly dressy for her job, along with extravagant accessories. When I inquired about her outfit, she mentioned that senior executives were visiting and she wanted to make a lasting impression, rather than starting an argument. I held my peace, but it left me wondering if I would ever see the old Sarah again. I loved her, but I struggled with this new version of her. Perhaps my insecurity played a role. Because I hadn't shed my extra weight and when we were together we no longer resembled a couple. I now had a trophy wife without the love and intimacy we once shared. And I was hopeful and praying that our getaway weekend would help us rekindle our connection. Regrettably, the events of that week put our plans for a getaway or a date night on hold. It was Thursday afternoon, around 4 p.m., when I received a call from the hospital. I was in the middle of delivering a presentation at our staff meeting when the call came in informing me that Daniel was in the emergency room and required immediate surgery. They emphasized the urgency and I needed to get to the hospital right away. I rushed in my car and sped like crazy to reach the hospital, which was roughly 15 minutes away. I attempted to call Sarah multiple times, but she didn't pick up. I also reached out to her parents, asking them to pick up our daughters and join us at the hospital to be with their brother. Meanwhile, I left several voicemails and texts on Sarah's phone, growing increasingly concerned about her whereabouts. Normally, she always answered her phone, but for some reason she was unresponsive. That day at the hospital, I met with the doctors, handled some paperwork, gave my insurance details and had a short visit with my son, who was injured with a broken leg, cuts and bruises. It was a distressing sight and tears welled up in my eyes as they wheeled him into the operating room. I felt alone and overwhelmed with worry about Sarah. Once again, they directed me to the surgery waiting room, where I reunited with my daughters and Sarah's parents, James and Helen. They looked to me for answers and I shared what little information I had, including the fact that Sarah was missing. We concluded that Sarah hadn't picked up Jacob from school and he had decided to walk home on his own. I expressed my deep concern about Sarah's absence, her unanswered calls and her failure to pick up Daniel. We stood in a circle in the private waiting room trying to piece together the situation. Let me call her office again and see if they know anything, I suggested. As I dialed her office number, I explained our son's accident and hospitalization and expressed my urgency in finding her. I asked the person on the other end about Sarah's whereabouts and I was informed that she hadn't been seen since her lunch break. I shared the situation with our son and asked if she knew who Sarah had lunch with. She informed me that Sarah had left for lunch at 1 p.m. with Mr. Mark, a sales representative from one of their suppliers. I requested Mr. Mark's contact information so I could try reaching out to him to determine Sarah's whereabouts. After a brief wait, she sent me Mr. Mark's business number and I thanked her. Before hanging up, I immediately dialed his number. But there was no answer and it went straight to voicemail. A sinking feeling washed over me, compounding the stress of our son's impending surgery. My wife appeared to be missing along with the salesman. Tears streamed down my face from the overwhelming strain. Helen, Sarah's mom, offered me a comforting hug and encouraged me to stay strong. Anger began to well up inside me when I suddenly heard Emily shout, "I found Mom, Dad." I turned to Emily, who was holding up her phone, and anxiously asked, "What do you mean?" She mentioned that her mom had installed a tracking app on their phones to keep tabs on them, and it worked for her phone too. She pointed at a blinking red dot on her phone and said that's where she was. I inquired about the location and she zoomed in on the phone, revealing it was at a downtown hotel. The surprise was evident on everyone's faces. Upon hearing this, I swiftly formulated a plan to contact her, although I knew it could mark the end of our marriage. Curious glances followed my actions as I dialed the hotel's number and asked to be connected to Mr. Mark's room. They placed me on hold and after a moment I heard the phone ring. Frustration was apparent in the man's voice when he finally answered after 8 rings. "Hello. Is this Mr. Mark?" I inquired. He confirmed and I requested to speak with Sarah. There was a brief pause before he responded, claiming she wasn't there. In a firm, controlled tone I asserted, "Mark, listen closely. I'm her husband and our son is in critical condition at the hospital." I continued, "I know she's with you and I need to speak with her urgently. Please put her on the phone." I raised my voice in anger. "Warning, Mark. If her son doesn't make it before I talk to her, I will find you and deal with you personally. Do you understand now? Put her on the phone." I heard some movement on the other end and that Sarah's nervous voice came through saying hello. My tone remained firm and controlled as I relayed the news, informing her that Daniel had been hit by a car on his way home from school and was in critical condition. I instructed her to come to the surgery waiting room at X hospital as soon as possible. Her scream resonated through the phone and the call was abruptly disconnected. At that moment I had been so focused that I forgot my 2 daughters and Sarah's parents were listening to the conversation. They now stared at me in utter shock. The emotions of the day, coupled with hearing my wife talking to her lover, overwhelmed me, and I couldn't hold back tears. For the first time, in front of my family, I cried. The pain from Daniel's accident and the loss of my wife was too much to bear, and I found myself on my knees sobbing. My children hugged me tightly, sharing their tears. Our neighbors Sophia and Roger stood nearby as well, witnessing the heartbreaking scene. Eventually I regained my composure, kissed my girls, wiped away my tears and addressed everyone. I apologized for what they had just heard, explaining that I lost control. When I answered the phone, I shared that it seemed Sarah had spent the afternoon in bed with a co-worker and had forgotten to pick up Jacob. I assured them that now that she knew about Daniel, she would likely be here shortly. I requested that he please keep her away from me, because I'm uncertain how I'll react given my current state. I could see the anger in her mother's eyes. Helen was a strong woman who had not raised her daughter to behave like this. She had disapproved of her daughter's recent changes and had voiced her concerns, but she never expected her little girl to act this way. Emily was still in tears and asked, "Dad, is Mom cheating on you?" I replied, "It seems that way, but you can ask her when she arrives. For now, let's focus on praying for your brother. He needs all our prayers right now. We can address Mom later." About 20 minutes later, Sarah entered the surgical waiting room only to be confronted by her mother. Helen approached her daughter and delivered a harsh slap across her face with such force that it could have knocked down a grown man. Sarah's head almost spun around and her face quickly rained from her mother's blow. Helen, in tears, uttered, "You disgrace. We raised you better than this. Is all your fault. I hope you're satisfied." Her dad intervened, grabbing Helen and looking at Sarah with a sorrowful expression. He told her, "Sarah, enough of this. We all know what you've been up to today. It's a shame that you cared more about your lover than your son. Now your son is fighting for his life because you are with another man." At this point, her daughter, Emily, cried out angrily, "I hate you. Cheated on Dad and now Daniel might die. I hate you." It was a chaotic and emotionally charged situation. Sarah glanced in my direction, but when she saw my expression, she turned away and sat alone on a chair away from the rest of us. We spent the next 30 minutes waiting anxiously for updates on Daniel's condition until a doctor arrived to speak with the family. He explained the injuries Daniel had sustained, including broken bones and a punctured lung that had been treated. The doctor informed us that he would need a blood transfusion and asked if we could donate. We all agreed without hesitation. As we waited for our blood to be drawn, I couldn't help but glance over at Sarah. Her appearance was disheveled and I realized she must have rushed out of the hotel room to get to the hospital. I couldn't help but comment, "Sarah, you look disheveled. Your nylons are missing. Your makeup is smeared and you haven't even brushed your hair. You smell like ZX and I suspect you're sitting here with your family while your body carries your boyfriend's scent." This is the height of disrespect. My comment caused her to finally lift her head and speak for the first time since her arrival. She responded, "Hugh, not my boyfriend. Please don't say that there's no one else. I only love you." I retorted, "Lisa, if he's not your boyfriend, then are you just sleeping with random men? Are you really just promiscuous? Please show me some respect. I'm not oblivious. You've been rejecting me for intimacy for the past 2 months. Even last night, you claimed to have a headache and turned me down again. Why, Sarah, did you want to be with another man instead? Why, Sarah, did you want to be all refreshed and ready for your boyfriend today? Look, this isn't the right time or place to discuss this. Just go home, freshen up and return looking presentable. Our children and your parents don't need to see you like this. I don't want to discuss your betrayal or our divorce until after Daniel gets better." She immediately replied, "Divorce? No, John. You can't divorce me. I love you. Please don't say that," I told her. "Sarah, we'll talk about our future, but not now. I can't expend my energy on you. At this moment, my focus is on Daniel, not what you've done to our family. Just go home and get yourself cleaned up. If you can't drive, I'll have your dad or someone else take you. But you need to leave now. Daniel won't be out of surgery for a while and you should be here when he wakes up." She stood up, tears still falling, apologized and left. About 2 hours later, Sarah returned with no makeup, her hair in a ponytail and dressed in jeans and a sweater. She had stopped crying but still looked worn out from the emotional turmoil. She sat with her parents and our girl stayed by my side. I spoke to my daughters, emphasizing the importance of not harboring resentment towards their mother and the need for us to focus on Daniel. I explained that we could have conversations about this situation later, but for now we needed to come together as a family for the next 2 days. We took turns keeping vigil for Daniel, who remained in a medically induced coma. Finally, on the 3rd day, we received positive news from the doctors and Daniel was going to be okay. He would need to stay in the hospital for a while, but he should be able to go home in about a week. We all cried tears of relief and embraced each other. Upon hearing the good news, Sarah tried to approach me, but I kept my distance and gently pushed her away as I comforted my daughters. Her world had shattered and she didn't know how to reintegrate into the family or salvage her marriage. Since our family members were taking turns staying at the hospital, there were no sleeping arrangements for Sarah and me. However, on the 3rd day I decided to communicate my intentions regarding our living situation once Daniel returned home. I informed Sarah that, now that Daniel was on the path to recovery, I would be sleeping at home again. I made it clear that I didn't want her in my bed and, given her involvement with others, I believed it was only fair for her to move her belongings into the guest room. She cried and professed her love for me, asking me not to kick her out. I told her that for the time being, until Daniel fully recovers, there is no us. She remains the mother of our children, and we will need her help with Daniel's recovery. However, as far as I'm concerned, she and I are no longer a couple, while we may still be legally married. For now, I no longer see her as my wife. She cried again, but she understood and relocated to the guest room. I also discussed this change with our daughters and they comprehended the situation. We all agreed not to let Daniel know what was happening until he was well into his recovery. I transformed our living room into Daniel's recovery space, rented a hospital bed and wheelchair, hired a daytime nurse and prepared for his return home. With Daniel unable to move freely in the living room, he wouldn't be aware of our sleeping arrangements, as long as our secret was kept. His recovery remained our top priority. Regarding the vehicle that struck Daniel, It turned out to be a driver for a paint company. During the investigation, the police discovered that the driver had been texting on his phone and was under the influence. At the time of the incident, our lawsuit gained considerable attention, as our attorneys recognized we had a strong case and sought substantial compensation. After the jury listened to the entire story, the company realized they were in trouble and offered us a substantial settlement instead of risking an even higher punitive damages payout from the jury. While this did little to ease our anger and grief, it did provide us with the means to afford the best medical treatments and physical therapy for Daniel. It also secured his future, covered the kids' college expenses, and allowed me to take a hiatus from my job to be there for Daniel during the 18 months it would take for his full recovery. My wife and our daughters all played a role in Daniel's recovery. When Daniel was released from the hospital, we brought him home to a new room, complete with a hospital bed, a TV remote, and his video games to make him as comfortable as possible during his rehabilitation. We had several day nurses assisting us during this period, which turned out to be a blessing. Sophia and Roger came over daily to help him. Together with our daughters, we adapted to the new normal. Roger and I spent a lot of time discussing my plans, while her parents suggested counseling to try to keep our family together. I expressed that I wasn't ready and wanted to continue focusing on helping Daniel through this challenging time. Sarah and I only communicated when we were together, with Daniel, being the sensitive one in the family, sensed that something was wrong. After hearing the girls talk about their mom's mistake, one day, when we were alone, he asked me what was happening and if I could forgive her. He reminded me that Mom loves me and that he could see she was hurting. I wiped away a tear and told him that their parents' issues were not his concern and that he should concentrate on getting better. That moment made me realize I needed to confront the situation and make some decisions. I informed Sarah that we were going out to dinner on Friday night to have a conversation. Sophia and Roger took care of the kids. That evening we went to our favorite Italian restaurant, and after a few drinks I decided it was time to talk. I asked the waiter to give us some time before we ordered. It was the first time since the accident that I had spoken directly to Sarah. Until that night I had only responded to questions or participated in conversations. So for the first time since the accident, I spoke directly to Sarah about our future together. I said, "Sarah, I understand it's been tough for you and it's not fair that you were in the guest room. Since the accident, I haven't had a chance to think about our future. But over the past few days I've come up with a solution to alleviate the stress the family is experiencing due to our situation. I'll look for an apartment near the house and you can move back into the master bedroom once Daniel is on his feet. I'll begin the divorce DIV process. I want to wait until he's better before he learns the full reason for our separation." A tear fell from her eye and I felt like a boy who had just lost his best friend as I held back my own tears for the loss. All the years of love I had for this woman were tarnished by one selfish act, and now both of us were paying for actions. She asked if there was any way I could forgive her, give her, and let her back into my life. I responded, "Sarah, I love you and I probably always will. Aside from Daniel's accident, losing you has been the hardest thing I've ever faced. I just don't see a way back. Your selfish choice to put your boyfriend before our family and betray my love is something I'm not sure I can get over." Her son, Daniel, nearly lost his life because she chose to be with Mark. Take a moment to consider my perspective on this. She asked me not to mention his name and admitted that she has despised herself since that day, recognizing that she messed up badly and doesn't deserve anything from me or our daughters. She wondered if there was anything she could do to make amends. I replied that I doubted it, given that, as far as I knew, she hadn't taken any steps to resolve the situation, which seemed to indicate her lack of genuine concern. I added that once our divorce was finalized, she could pursue her relationship with her boyfriend or anyone else. With her new appearance and charm, she could likely attract any man she desired. She acknowledged this, but emphasized that since the accident, she had been trying to support Daniel and had attempted not to dwell on what she had done to me. She implored me to consider giving her another chance. I responded, "Do as you wish, Sarah. I'm not making any promises. I'll wait a few weeks before I begin searching for an apartment. However, I must admit that when I reflect on the months leading up to the accident, the way you treated me, the lack of intimacy and your self-centeredness, I can't help but believe that you genuinely don't care. I was by your side during illness and idolized you. Yet you discarded all that love as if it were trash. You handed over what was once mine to another man, allowing him to exploit you. And who knows what else transpired between you two. I'm not sure how I can move past that. Sarah, tell me, how long were you involved with Mark before that day? She confessed that she had never been with him before that incident and that it had only happened once, insisting there was no one else. I clarified that her response didn't address my question about the duration of her relationship with Mark. It was evident that they had made plans before that day. I speculated that they might have had lunches after hours. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. Exchanged special text messages or even emails. I asked if I would discover evidence of a relationship if I checked her phone's text messages or emails. I explained to her that an affair involves more than just physical intimacy. It encompasses emotional involvement and attention given to another person. I urged her to be honest. She finally admitted that began about 3 months before the accident. Right before her 40th birthday, she mentioned feeling old. But when Mark learned she was turning 40, he began complimenting her and making her feel young and desirable. She knew it was wrong, but couldn't deny that she enjoyed the attention from a younger man. She mentioned that she began to feel attractive again, and his constant flirtations contribute to this. She admitted that after 20 years of being with only me, she suddenly felt like a schoolgirl. Mark persistently asked her out to dinner and his continued flirting made her feel even more desirable. On the day of the incident, he took her to lunch but surprised her by taking her straight to his hotel room, suggesting they order room service. It didn't take long for him to seduce her, and she's been regretting her actions every moment since she emphasized that it was a one-time mistake and she vowed never to repeat such behavior. In response, I reminded her of her enjoyment of dancing and flirting with younger guys at her birthday party. I mentioned our previous conversation about it and acknowledged that since she started going to the gym with Sophia, she had undergone changes. I expressed my dissatisfaction with the new version of Sarah and what she had become. I understood her desire to feel youthful, have excitement in her life or seek more than I could offer. But I wish she had communicated her feelings with me instead of seeking something outside our marriage. I didn't want to live with a partner who made me feel like I had to compete with younger men or that she was engaged in secretive activities. My confidence myself, our marriage, the trust I had in her and our life together had all been eroded. I conveyed my uncertainty about whether anything could be done to mend our relationship. After our conversation, we ate in silence, both processing the discussion, and returned home. Roger seemed hopeful, but I shook my head and thanked him for looking after the kids. When we entered the house, Sophia noticed Sarah's tears and realized that nothing had changed. At least we had made an effort. A month later, Sarah surprised me by making dinner reservations and taking charge of the conversation. She acknowledged that I had been right about everything, admitting that for the past 2 years she had moved on without me and had only focused on herself while trying to improve her physical shape. She acknowledged that what she had done was unforgivable and couldn't be undone or changed. She informed me that she had been seeing a therapist to help her deal with the guilt from her actions. She described how every night she had cried for hours, reflecting on how close she had come to losing our son and damaging the man she loved. Her therapist had been instrumental in helping her understand the pain her selfish actions had caused him and how she had hurt me in the worst way possible. She also mentioned that the therapist had provided some insights into her poor choices. She explained that her actions had been a cry for attention or possibly a midlife crisis. But I disagreed with her and took complete responsibility for my own mistakes. I acknowledged that I had messed up, made poor choices, and had convinced myself that I deserved to enjoy my newfound youth after putting in so much effort to look good. Initially, my intention was just to get in shape, but as I shed the extra weight, I started receiving a lot of attention from men. This newfound attention made me feel youthful, attractive and desirable, which was particularly impactful as I approached my 40th birthday. As she spoke, it was evident that she was struggling to hold herself together, and I sat in silence, allowing her to continue. She admitted that what was truly baffling was that she had loved our life, our children, and our marriage. She had never contemplated hurting me or being unfaithful. Yet that's precisely what had happened. It began, innocently, with flirting, some of which you witnessed at my birthday party. Though I had dismissed your concerns. Then came the lunches and more flirting, until I ultimately allowed myself to make a terrible mistake during a meaningless afternoon of ZX. I despise myself for what I did, and I now realize that it's not reflective of who I truly am. I want you to understand how deeply sorry I am for the pain I've caused you and the damage I've inflicted upon our son. I carry an immense burden of guilt and suffering each day. My actions were entirely selfish, driven by my own desires, and I wasn't considering the consequences for our love and marriage. What I'm sharing with you isn't an excuse, and I don't expect your forgiveness because I violated our vows, betrayed your trust and affection. I'll accept it if you decide you want the worst from me. In light of what I've done, this happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. It will sadden me. Ultimately, I want you to be happy and with someone you can trust. In the meantime, I'm committed to making an effort to win you back. John, during our last dinner, you pointed out that I hadn't taken any steps to salvage our marriage, and I confessed that I had been so preoccupied with our son's well-being that I didn't know how to save us. Since that moment, I've spent the past month working to demonstrate what I've done to try and bring you back. She maintained her composure and spoke with a serious tone, outlining her plan. First and foremost, she revealed that she had submitted her resignation and intended to become a stay-at-home mom. She planned to care for Daniel full-time, eliminating the need for day nurses. She had also informed her boss, Mr. Khan, about her affair with the supplier, giving the supplier standing in the community and church while she was with her boss. He had called the supplier and conveyed that they would sever their business relationship unless they immediately terminated Mark. It turns out that our company is their largest customer and a significant portion of their revenue depends on our business. Before we went out tonight, I discovered that we weren't the first ones to complain, and Mark had indeed been fired. Following that, I visited Mark's wife, Patricia, and extended my apologies for our actions. When I recounted the entire story of my efforts to mend things with you, the only man I've ever loved, I broke down in tears. Patricia responded with more kindness than I would have expected, possibly understanding the guilt and remorse I was experiencing. She tried to console me and mentioned that it wasn't entirely my fault, as Mark had a reputation as a woman, her with a knack for seducing women. However, she also admonished me not to disrespect the man I love ever again. She wished me luck in reconciling with you and mentioned that, while this wasn't the first time something like this had happened, it would certainly be the last. I got the sense that she might be seeking legal advice. After leaving Patricia, I called Sophia and informed her that I was discontinuing my gym membership. I also planned to continue with therapy. I had come to the realization that I'm a mature woman with a family that relies on me given the opportunity. I'm determined to be the best mom and wife I can be. Additionally, I decided to give away all of my new clothes, retaining only a few items more suitable for someone of my age. Continuing her narrative, she mentioned that she had been researching articles about affairs over the past few weeks. She had even read stories where wives subjected themselves to polygraph tests to answer all the questions their husbands had. She found that there were approximately 20 common questions that needed answers. Consequently, she made an appointment last week and visited an office downtown that specialized in lie detector exams. She had them ask her all the questions she had prepared. They considered her questions unorthodox and not typical, but agreed to incorporate them randomly with their regular questions. She provided them with the list of questions she knew you must have been pondering and answered them truthfully in a desperate tone. She explained, "This envelope contains the answers to your questions. I want you to know that I haven't opened it or looked at the results. I'm confident in what's true and I believe these results will confirm my honesty. I'm even willing to undergo regular testing every few months to demonstrate how much I love you and that you can trust me again." I also consulted with an attorney and requested her to draft a postnuptial agreement as a way to demonstrate my seriousness in trying to regain your trust. This postnuptial agreement stipulates that if I were to make the same mistake again, I would willingly forfeit custody of our children and vacate our home without seeking any support or alimony. I've learned that this is a common practice for individuals who have cheated. Like me. Yes, I acknowledge what I've done and I've come to terms with the label, no matter how tarnished it may make me feel. I'm aware that I have a lot of amends to make in that promise to prioritize you above all else. You'll find the post-nuptial agreement, along with the polygraph test results in the envelope. I was taken aback by her actions and her revelations about what she had done. My wife recognized the impact on our family and our marriage. I asked, "Well, Sarah, I must admit I'm surprised by your efforts. It certainly gives me something to ponder. But I have one pressing question. Why are you so determined to salvage this marriage? You've clearly lost respect for me as your husband, and we're seeking something else. With your looks and physique, you can have any man you desire. You need to be honest with yourself and contemplate why you want to remain with me, an overweight middle-aged man. Given your feelings towards me, I can't comprehend why you'd want me now. My suspicion is that you feel guilty about being caught and want forgiveness to alleviate that guilt." "No, that's not it," she responded. "I want us to get back together because I love. You were there for me when I was ill, took care of me, nursed me back to health and never once complained. All those years, your love has always been unwavering. I took it all for granted and now I realize how precious that love truly is. There's no one else I desire and I can't even envision being with someone else. It has always been you and I squandered it honestly. You've always fulfilled my needs sexually and you've always made me happy. I just took everything for granted and stopped thinking about anyone else but myself. And that will never happen again." As she sat sobbing uncontrollably in the restaurant, her cries growing more intense, we began to attract the attention of other patrons. I went over to her, put my arms around her, and held her close as she wept into my shoulder. My heart ached from witnessing her pain, and I wasn't certain how much more of these emotional roller coasters I could endure. After she calmed down, she handed me an envelope and told me to read the contents later, when I was alone in bed. It certainly piqued my curiosity, and I wondered what revelations awaited me. Upon arriving home, and just before we pulled into the driveway, she gazed at me with the saddest eyes I had ever seen and said, "Please don't leave us. John, don't move out of our home. I'm willing to stay in the guest room if you don't want me in your bed. I understand why you wouldn't want me there. Because if I were in your shoes, I'd feel the same way. I comprehend, and I'll be there for as long as you want. I just want to be with you and reunite our family. Please don't abandon us. I understand you may never forgive me, but I'm asking for a chance to win back your love once more." Once in my room, I took a shower, brushed my teeth, got into bed and stared at the manila envelope, pondering what revelations it held. Would it make any difference? Did I even want her back? After everything that had unfolded, would I dare to open the file? Those questions swirled in my mind. Opening the envelope, I was taken aback by the level of detail contained in the polygraph test report. I examined all the questions, responses, data, and the somehow. Evidently, she had put in considerable effort. As all the questions that had plagued, my thoughts were now addressed in my hands. Uncertain if I was truly prepared, I was about to uncover the truth. The questions appeared to be scrambled and presented out of sequence, perhaps intentionally designed to prevent her from anticipating the next inquiry. It was apparent from the questions that Sarah herself had crafted them, as they didn't adhere to the typical format of a polygraph test. Reading her answers, I slept soundly that night, still uncertain about my future, but somewhat relieved by the answers to those questions. The following morning I approached Sarah's room and requested her presence at a family meeting. Sarah appeared worn out, bearing bags under her drowsy eyes, clearly tormented by stress and tears. Due to the family's coldness, her life had become a living nightmare. Strangely, the only person who continued to speak to her and had forgiven her was Daniel, our son, who was enduring the most hardship. He was the first to extend forgiveness to his mother. This marked our initial family meeting since the incident, and Sarah seemed apprehensive as she sat alone on the couch. I walked over, took a seat beside her and held her hand. Fully aware that this would be a challenging conversation, I began. "I'll speak on behalf of all of us. Sarah, What you've done has inflicted harm upon this family and left me with one of the most agonizing decisions of my life. You might not approve of my choice, but it's the only way I can preserve my self-respect as a man. The kids have expressed their wishes, desiring to keep our family intact. Until last night, I couldn't envision a scenario in which I wouldn't leave you and find a new apartment. Yet after reading the polygraph report and witnessing your efforts to salvage our marriage over the past month, you surprised me. Your cheating was a devastating blow. But the true damage stemmed from the way you treated me and the family over the last 6 months. When I discovered that you had mentally checked out and were involved with another man, I was certain I wanted a divorce to end our marriage. In addition to the pain this caused, I was incensed because your infidelity played a part in Daniel's injuries, making it unforgivable. After careful consideration, I genuinely believed that if the roles were reversed and I had an affair that resulted in Daniel's accident, there would be no room for discussion and you would have already shown me the door. However, for some inexplicable reason, I still hold love for you, and the prospect of losing you will inflict even more agony than the pain you've already caused me. It's a conundrum, but my affection for you remains unwavering. Despite the wishes of those around us, I cannot continue in this marriage knowing that you've betrayed my trust, shattered your commitment to fidelity, and violated our marital vows. By staying married to you, I'd essentially be condoning your actions, and, as much as it might sound harsh, I've made the firm decision to proceed with the divorce. So that's the extent of what I needed to convey to her. She was devastated, but she grasped that my mind was firmly made up and there was no changing my decision. I've forgiven her, but trust is something I can no longer extend. The divorce process took a couple of months and went uncontested. We divided our assets evenly. Since our children were grown, custody wasn't an issue. I won't delve into every detail, but it all transpired smoothly. I have to give her credit. She made it abundantly clear that her top priority was reuniting our family. There were moments when thoughts of Sarah crossed my mind, but that was due to the lingering love I held for her. We maintain contact and everyone is content, including our children. Overall, we're all managing well, and the events of that fateful day are now firmly in the past, never to be revisited. Daniel made a full recovery, and thanks to the months of physical therapy, he developed a habit of regular exercise. As for my own love life, I'm presently unattached but eagerly anticipating what the future holds. Regarding Mark, he faced the consequences of his actions and the damage he inflicted on my family and marriage. His wife promptly kicked him out and served him divorce papers. After Sarah confessed her indiscretions, he ended up in a small studio apartment. Following his termination, his attempts at dating were short-lived as potential partners discovered his history of infidelity. I learned about his struggles through his ex-wife, who thought it might aid in the healing process after my wife's affair. I'm not sure how or why she reached out to me, but I appreciate her jest. If you enjoy this kind of family revelation, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more plots.